Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's take this thing home.
Here we go. Here we go. Jordan Botelho had a good opening game against Texas A&M. Here is Mr. Marcus Freeman on the Vyper defensive end.
Botelho played. Whew, I mean, it was a debate. Was he the player of the game or Xavier Watts? Jordan played well, and he played hard, like consistently. He did his job, and that's what you want to see out of a senior. And man, from the time I've gotten here to where Jordan Botelho is now, man, he's grown so much, and so proud to be on this journey with him. His performance is a reflection of the way he's prepared, though. He's preparing his tail off, and he's playing at a high level right now.
So, scale of 1 to 10, how convinced are you Jordan Botelho has officially turned a corner?
I'm gonna have to go a solid 9 out of 10. The first indication that I got is that he took his off-season preparation seriously, right? The guy came into camp in fantastic shape, the best shape we've ever seen him. I even recognize him almost. Like, his face is way slimmed down compared to, what he was in the past. And then, another thing too is, I've been watching kind of the Here Come the Irish on the Peacock. He put himself up there to be a team captain. And even though he didn't get, overall selected, I still think that's the mentality that he had is, it is my time on this defense. I'm a veteran. I'm going to be a leader. And so again, not getting selected, sure, whatever. But I like the mindset of still wanting to lead, right? To still put himself out there and take on those expectations. And, kind of getting into how he played against Texas A&M, I thought he was tremendous. I thought the effort was there every game. And I think most importantly, we never saw a play where like, damn, Botelho really, screwed up that fit, or Botelho is the reason why a big play kind of broke here, or, maybe he didn't keep contained on the quarterback as he was stepping up in the pocket.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There was only one play like that I remember. Like, he looped outside and around a little bit, and Wigman took off running. I think he ended up scrambling for a first down. Like, that was the only one that I really remember. It was in the first half. But otherwise, the contain seemed good all night. He was where he was supposed to be most of the night. It was just a really good day for him. He ended up with 6 tackles, the second most tackles for the defense.
A lot of lane integrity, right? Like force plays to kind of go inside and not break to the outside. Didn't over pursue and create run lanes off the edge. And yeah, he found a way to kind of get himself into the tackle mix as well. So I just thought he played a very clean game, right? Like, I think he didn't really have too many like wow high plays, and he didn't really have any too, like what are you doing type plays. He played really consistent, played really hard. And again, I think that's what you need out of that position. And that's what Marcus Freeman loves, is consistently, who can I trust to be out there every play, and who's going to give me their best effort every play. And I thought he did a tremendous job of that the entire game.
Yeah, where is the question? Josh asked how many pressures he got. 2. The team got 2. Botelho had both of them. So, that was big as well. As a team, they didn't have a whole lot of pressures. They only had the 1 sack by Howard Cross, just the 2 pressures, but it was obviously a very good night overall. And, I think I'm kind of with Sloppy Joe. Like, he says he thinks an 8, but don't know if the team tricked him into thinking that Texas A&M was a bowl game, because it seems to be like when Botelho comes to play. So I'm a little bit lower, I guess, because, look, we've seen flashes from Jordan Botelho before, but what do we need to see from him? We need to see consistency, game in and game out. So, like, okay, very good. You had a really good game against Texas A&M, and like Marcus Freeman said, in contention, Xavier Watts ended up being the defensive player of the game. And, Botelho, was in that conversation as well. I'm more like what USMA, maybe just a tack below. He says 6'7". I'm in a 5'6" range. I just need to continue to see it for a couple of games. But just a lot of discipline that he showed, and not just reckless abandon out there. And that's kind of what we've seen from him, just a lot of undisciplined stuff. But you're right about his conditioning as well. I think he talked about the fact that he stopped eating, I don't know if it was Mongolian barbecue or, something like it was Korean barbecue, I think is what he said that that he had to give up, and he lost a good 15, 20 pounds as a result. And he looks like it. He looks like he's moving a lot better out there. So tight end Mitchell Evans played just 10 snaps against Texas A&M after coming back from ACL surgery last October. Here's what Marcus Freeman said about that.
He just got cleared probably 6 days or 7 days before we played. So we were very intentional about getting him on the field and the right opportunities, but he wasn't, without having a full training camp, he just physically wasn't ready to play 50, 60, 70 plays. Each week he'll continue to increase his workload. It's a long season, and so we got to make sure that we give him the best opportunity to succeed throughout the entirety of the season.
So another scale of 1 to 10, what's your concern level with Evans being healthy, and what's your concern level with the tight end room without a healthy Mitchell Evans?
Yeah, I think my level of concerns with Mitchell Evans is like a 5 or a 6, kind of really around a 50-50, right? I think when you have kind of the injuries that he's had, there's always going to be a chance, but I like the approach that Marcus Freeman and the team are taking, being like, well, just because you're clear doesn't mean we're going to throw you right into the fire immediately, right? Like you build up kind of that stamina or that snap count that he was talking about. And I think eventually he'll get, back into the groove of things. But again, I'm going to put it at like a 50-50 because I think when you talk about ACLs and that sort of thing, I think once it happens to you once, you're kind of permanently compromised. And again, it just kind of takes, one hit, one kind of awkward landing. And unfortunately, you could kind of be back in the same situation. And then kind of moving on to, my concern with the tight end room without Mitchell Evans, to be quite honest with you, yes, he's one of the nation's, top end talented tight ends when he's healthy. But my level of concern would probably still only be like a 2 or a 3 because I have a lot of confidence in Eli Raridan and Cooper Flanagan. I think those guys are great. I mean, we saw the catch that Flanagan made, on that play that I just had on the whiteboard. So while it would suck, I still think Notre Dame has a bunch of talent behind him in the tight end room. So my level of concern really wouldn't be too high.
Yeah, my level of concern with the tight end room is probably a 2, maybe just because, like we saw Cooper Flanagan. Now Flanagan, there was a block or 2 that he missed. That's got to get better because that is part of the job of the tight end. And I think that it's smart the way they played Mitchell Evans. He was mostly out there on third downs, just as a receiving tight end. He was unattached out there. So that's, so we only ended up playing the 10, keeping him out of those sort of, what would you call him? Like more contact with the blocking and stuff. Like remember when Patrick Mahomes injured his knee a few years ago? Like it was
no more QB sneaks.
That's right. It was on a quarterback sneak type thing where you've got to kind of, more strain and pressure on that knee trying to get through the line. And that's obviously there's going to be a lot more strain and pressure and stuff like that when you're coming back from a knee injury if you're asking your tight end to do more blocking. My level of concern with Evans is maybe a 4 or 5 just because of the fact that they do my only concern is that if it's like a little tender and he is still coming back and all that different kind of stuff that like you just don't know, like any fluky crazy kind of play could ultimately injure it, just like it was a fluky crazy kind of play that where he injured it last year on the turf out there. So like 4 or 5, but the fact that they're giving him this load management tells me that they're not going to push him back too soon. They're not going to try to push him back too soon. And there are, enough other quality guys at that position that they don't have to rush him back in there.
So Andrew Gilmore kind of brings up, I would say, the one downside of losing Mitchell Evans is I don't think Raridan and Flanagan are near the type of blockers that he is. And I think that is, important when you are trying to get on the perimeter and run those kind of power runs that we just saw with Riley Leonard. And I think those guys will get there with more reps. It's just Mitchell Evans is better than that. But that's ultimately what you're afraid of is you don't want him engaging on those open field kind of big blocks, essentially.
And that's like Raridan was a pretty good blocker a couple of years ago as a freshman, and then he had his own injury. And I would say I agree with that. Andrew, like what you want from the tight ends as blockers, that's probably the issue. But I would have thought that we would have seen more out of Eli Raritan in that respect, but
Same.
we didn't, so
I mean, it kind of goes to, I don't want to, this is like my biggest takeaway from the offensive side of the ball, and I don't think I'll have another kind of opportunity to get this in here. I'm just going to be kind of frank about it. I don't think we're going to see an offense like this the rest of the season. I think there was a very deliberate plan for the young offensive line, for, understanding how much time Riley Leonard would have to get the ball out, what kind of run plays and concepts can work off of that. I think you're going to start to see more of the downfield stuff as the season progresses. This was an elite defensive line from Texas A&M. So all the people out there that are worried about, this is the same old, we can't throw the ball, we're not pushing it downfield. Hold your horses, relax a little bit. I think Mike Denbrock had an entire kind of summer camp to figure out how he wanted to handle Texas A&M, and that's going to look different from what you might see the rest of the season.
Correct. So the question about from Sportsman Philly 22, Anye was never mentioned. Did he actually play? He did, and he actually played quite a bit Saturday. He played, according to Pro Football Focus, where are my defensive line numbers? Well, I guess not quite a bit, but he played a decent amount, 18 total snaps. Like Howard Cross played the most. Cross 51 snaps, Botelho 48, Mills 41, Boubacar Traore 36 snaps.
RJ had a great game.
Yeah, he did. RJ Oben 29, Josh Burnham 26, Heinisch 25, Anye 18, and Bryce Young played a pair of snaps out there, according to Pete.
Still 25% of the game.
So yeah, I mean they let it, and look, I think when you look at those 18 snaps, the way they played him, it really kept Cross and Mills fresh for the end of the game, when you needed them to be out there making some plays. Matt says, give Young a shot. He played a couple of snaps. I mean, Josh Burnham and RJ Oben are in front of him. They deserve everything that they're getting as well. Now, Oben was out there and didn't see a whole lot of impact from him, but just in terms of, again, like setting the edge and all that different kind of stuff, I thought that it was pretty good. When you look at how well Notre Dame played against the run and you didn't have a lot of busted plays and stuff like that, I think those defensive line can go overlooked in some of that. Even though they're not accumulating a bunch of stats, I still think they played pretty solid out there. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame versus Texas A&M had 8.2 million viewers, making it ABC's second most watched Saturday night game since Notre Dame, Ohio State in 2022, which got 10.53 million.
Yeah, not to sound kind of, like, oh, I'm better than everyone, but kind of like, to me, it's expected. I mean, we're talking about Notre Dame against an SEC opponent. Both teams are ranked on the road, opening week of college football season in prime time. Like, honestly, I was actually a little bit more surprised that it didn't do better than the Notre Dame and Ohio State game from a year or two ago, right? Like, I always expect,
when you consider what the competition was, like in terms of what else was on that night.
Right. And so again, to me, those things are always kind of expected. Notre Dame is a national brand. They're playing an SEC team that's ranked on the road. And again, you either, to me, you love or hate Notre Dame. You tune in to watch them because you love them and you want them to win. Or if you're like my friends from Michigan and every other friend I have, you tune in to watch. And so when they're doing bad, you can text me and try to ruin the rest of my day, right? Like, that's ultimately how it goes. You either love them or you hate them, but you're ultimately always going to be tuned in because they're a national brand.
Yeah. Beefeater says it sounds kind of low, but again, remember, Ohio State 2 years ago, the game on ABC at the Horseshoe, 10.5 million. This is second only to that. So even though it's a couple million shy of that, I mean, Ohio State is a big TV commodity as well. So I think it says a lot about Notre Dame and the interest in that game. And I'm just going to go to the next question because, with kind of some of the stuff that you were just saying, you kind of, set up for this one. I don't know if it's because you knew it was coming, but someone on our new Champions Lounge made a post saying he's convinced that nobody can actually hate Notre Dame. And the main reason for past Notre Dame hate is basically because of Brian Kelly over the last 15 years. Do you buy or sell that?
I big time sell that. I think Notre Dame, whether they want to admit it or not, let's just be honest, they kind of keep their nose above everyone and kind of have this mentality of, we're kind of better than everyone. We're smarter than you. When they were winning at football, in the 80s, and before that, like they have the All-Americans, they have the Heismans, they have the guys going into the NFL, they have a great degree. Again, when all things are clicking, there's really, in my opinion, you can't do much better than Notre Dame, right? Because you're like the nerd that's also a stud jock at the same time. And to kind of go into what I was just saying, you either love them because of this brand that they've built nationwide, coast to coast, or you hate them because you want to watch them lose. Like, listen to Barstool Big Cat, right? Like when he was interviewing Marcus Freeman, he was like, listen, I like to see Notre Dame lose, but Notre Dame being good is good for college football, right? And I think that's what's important at the end of the day. Everyone wants Notre Dame to be good, but they also want them to see them fail in the big moment. And that's the thing. Notre Dame hasn't won in the big moment in a really long time.
It's the most polarizing program that there is in college football, and it goes above Alabama and Ohio State and Michigan and everybody else. They're the most polarizing. Like, there's been hate for Notre Dame since before the White Walkers roamed the earth. Like, didn't they do a Game of Thrones episode about, how much everybody hates Notre Dame? I'm joking, of course, but it feels like it because it just goes back so long. I mean, obviously, it goes back to Catholic stuff with Michigan and Yost and, all that different stuff. But obviously, the Notre Dame is just polarizing. The independence question that comes up all the time, the relevance question that comes up all the time, and it's basically because of you either love or you hate Notre Dame. It had nothing to do with Brian Kelly, and Andrew made a good point. The hate for Brian Kelly is internal. Like that's a Notre Dame fan thing. Like most people from the outside can't understand why Notre Dame fans, a majority of Notre Dame fans, or at least a good chunk of Notre Dame fans, I don't even know if it's a majority, but a good, why, so many people are down on Brian Kelly. And then, you watch, like the clip from the other night, and it was worse when he was at Notre Dame, blaming the snapper for bad snaps in a hurricane, stuff like that would come out of Brian Kelly all the time. And, obviously the way he left. So it's Notre Dame has just always been love-hate. It has nothing to do with any coach recently. It's just, look and ask, like he's saying, well, like if you're a fan of a team, of course you're going to question, how can anybody actually hate my team? Why do they hate my team? Well, think about, okay, you're a fan of this team. Think about the teams that you hate or dislike or whatever as a result because of your fandom for that specific team, and then flip it around, and virtually everybody's got that for Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame just fits right in the middle of everybody's Venn diagram when it comes to hate.
Let me put this out there. This is I'm gonna catch a little bit of flack. Everyone's gonna have to take a drink here, whatever. But
I know where this is going.
For everyone in the chat, this is the most comparable thing I think I can say. Think of how you feel about the Dallas Cowboys. It's the same type of energy between I think Notre Dame is the most comparable team to the Dallas Cowboys. You either love them or you hate them, right? If you're a Cowboys fan,
the New York
absolutely
Yankees
love
as well.
them.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right.
It just falls into that same sort of, perception. And so when you ask this question, again, just reflect on how you feel about the Dallas Cowboys.
There you go. Fill in the blank. Florida State losing to Boston College is blank.
Embarrassing to the highest degree. I still need to know if that guy that said he'd eat some dog poop out of a cup has ate that dog
Has he
poop out of the
emerged?
cup.
Have they
Yeah.
found him? Are they looking for him?
No,
I
but in
saw
all
him-
seriously, like if you're Mike Norvell, like you have to be almost on your way out of town. Like the suitcase is half packed, the plane is fired up. Like I if they lose another game, and I don't even know who they play next, but I just don't understand how this thing goes on much longer. And to be honest with you, kind of coming off of the talent they had last season and where they've kind of ended up at this point, it's just not a good look. Ultimately, and I think they paid a lot of money into the this is the thing, they're not just mediocre to bad at quarterback. They have a lot of issues amongst the offensive line, the running backs. Like their whole offense is really bad, and then not even to mention like they're getting gouged by Georgia Tech, Boston College on defense. Like they can't stop anyone and they can't score at all. So I mean, this is a really embarrassing look for a team that cried that they belonged in the college football playoff last season.
And that's the thing. They seem like they got hung up on last year. They obviously made a big mistake in evaluation with DJ Uiagalelei. He is worse now than he was when he was at Clemson a couple of years ago. He has not looked good at all. And it's not just that they've lost. They're already out of the ACC conference race because they've not just lost 2 games to open the season. They've lost to 2 ACC teams, Georgia Tech and to Boston College. And I was thinking about this today. They just played in week 0 in Ireland last week. And then they came home, and now they got 2 extra days because they played on a Monday. But, think of how Notre Dame scheduled last year. They came back and they played, but what did they do? They played Tennessee State. They played their first ever FCS team so that they didn't have to take a break that next week. And they still played a game and got a win. Like they are just, it is not a good situation at all. And like when you spin it to what Notre Dame's schedule, like Notre Dame's schedule already did not look great. And if this is what you're going to see from Florida State this season, man, I mean, that's the primetime game in early November is Notre Dame and Florida State. The way it's shaping up right now, that's not going to set any viewership records.
I will say though, what you just said, I don't know if you caught a glimpse of, I knew you were a busy man before the show today. AP poll came out. Georgia Tech, USC, Louisville, all ranked now. I think that bodes well for Notre Dame. Yes, they do have, 4, group of 5 teams on the schedule. But again, this is why I never like getting caught up in the preseason rankings or what. Just let the season play out. Let the schedule play out. I guarantee by the time it's all said and done, they'll play at least 3 to 4 ranked opponents, and they'll have their fair share of, hard, medium, and easy opponents, just like every other schedule does.
Georgia Tech could easily replace Florida State, essentially,
exactly,
as the tough game on the schedule. You're right. I did see someone, a Notre Dame guy, on Twitter this afternoon who went and, like there's like all the ballots are public, like who voted for who and how they, did all that different stuff about, there were a couple people who, actually dropped Notre Dame after they won on the road last week and stuff like that, which is just seems very odd. I mean, how many ranked teams actually played in week 1?
You're going to lead me to my favorite tangent of this week. I remember this specifically as I was watching the Notre Dame A&M game on my phone in a camper in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, when I'm freaking, having a little bit of Sprite and lemonade in my cup. I'm sitting there watching, and they cut to halftime, and the first thing they say is, Alabama doesn't look like they've lost a step under Kalen DeBoer. And it's like, they're playing Western Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
Like, what do you expect? Why don't we talk about the team who's actually, showing some guts and tied in a game at halftime on the road in what's considered the most hostile environment in the country? Sorry, we're not playing Furman. Sorry, we're not playing Akron or Western Kentucky. Like, how can you get a true glimpse of who these teams are and what they are when you're loaded with 4- and 5-star recruits, and maybe some of these teams have 1 4-star recruit, 1 5-star? Like, what are we talking about, right? Like that's the stuff that drives me crazy at the end of the day.
Yeah, somebody moved Missouri past Notre Dame after Missouri beat Murray State 51-0 in week 1. And again, we're talking about a road win against a ranked SEC team that Notre Dame had, and Missouri impressed
were the
that
underdog.
because they
were
waxed
the
Murray
underdog.
State. Yep. So, yeah, that's, again, it comes back to a lot of these people can try to say, well, I'm in the media and, and I'm not biased and I'm looking at this subjectively or whatever, but it just feels like you're showing a little bit of bias somewhere if that's how you're voting in that case. So after seeing Clemson get thumped by Georgia over the weekend, do you buy or sell Dabo Swinney's best days being behind him?
I would push, but I'm gonna say sell. I don't think his best days are behind him. I think the better question should be, is Cade Klubnik's best days behind him? And I think that answer is true. Listen, ultimately, what won Dabo Swinney those national championships and allowed him to go on those runs? Trevor Lawrence
and Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly. He nailed it at the quarterback position, right?
Yep.
One of my buddies texted me over this weekend, Notre Dame's success is going to be predicated around the performance of Riley Leonard. And it's like, no, like that's not even a statement. What are you saying? Every college team revolves around how good their quarterback is. If you have an elite quarterback with a relatively elite roster, you're going to accomplish a lot of things, right? And so to me, Dabo Swinney just hasn't found his way back to a Deshaun Watson or a Trevor Lawrence or that kind of situation, because their defense didn't look half bad last year. You got to realize they're playing freaking Georgia. Like, that's a really good team.
It actually didn't look half bad for half the game the other day. Like, Georgia wasn't scoring for most of the first half either, but when the offense isn't contributing for Clemson, it just, blew things open. You're absolutely right, and that's pretty much my point. And it's not just that he hasn't found Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. He's missed on 2 5-star quarterbacks in a row, DJ Uiagalelei and Cade Klubnik. And otherwise, you can talk about transfer portal and all that different stuff, but the rest of the roster is in pretty good shape. It's not, I wouldn't put it like, I guess what I'm saying, like the direction that Marcus Freeman is taking this, like when you look at the quarterback recruiting, just what you were saying about Riley Leonard, that's ultimately, if Notre Dame is going to be a true national championship contender and not just get to the playoff contender, it's the quarterback recruiting. And the discussion about, do you really need to get a 5-star or a high 4-star quarterback every year? That's why you have to keep going out and trying to get that every single year, because you're not going to hit on all of them. The odds say that at some point, some guys are going to hit. At some point, some guys are going to miss. And that's the biggest thing for Swinney right now, is he's missed on 2 5-star quarterbacks in a row. But that's why you've got to go out and get the absolute best quarterback that you can in every cycle to help prevent some of that, because you are going to have transfers, and at some point, some of these guys are going to miss.
I enjoy the sarcasm in this question. I know that it's oozing in sarcasm. And just to kind of cap off this kind of discussion we're having here, and I know it's easier to have this conversation in hindsight, right? Put everything aside. I'm going to ask you a simple question. Does Notre Dame win that game with Sam Hartman as quarterback?
I don't think so. I mean, it took Riley Leonard's legs to make
break things open
ultimately. Yeah. And again, like when you look at why they needed to go out and get Riley Leonard in the transfer portal, Steve Angeli or Kenny Menchie easily, as we've said before, could beat 95% of the schedule. But you went out and got an experienced quarterback like Riley Leonard with the poise and everything that he showed to win this kind of game. To not just be able to go 10-2, but to legitimately have the chance to go 12-0, and then not just get to the college football playoff, but win some playoff games once you get there with a guy like Riley Leonard. That's why you go out and you get him. And it's funny because, like we've been talking about national guys and stuff like that. And I won't say the name because I can't remember exactly which one said it, but I heard someone say yesterday, why didn't why wasn't Riley Leonard already playing for Notre Dame? Like, you look at the name and you look at the, the way this kid looks and the way he plays and all this stuff, that was like a natural Notre Dame fit. Well, could you imagine if Brian Kelly had recruited, this 2.5-star quarterback out of Alabama who was a basketball player to come to Notre Dame, out of high school? Could you imagine that? He obviously, and Sam Hartman was the same way, like with their play at these smaller programs, they turned themselves into, better than what their recruiting ranking was coming out of high school. And obviously there's still a ton of upside for a guy like Leonard because, again, he was going to be a basketball guy coming out of high school. He gets an opportunity to go to Duke and he's played himself into what he is right now. He hasn't come anywhere close to seeing his ceiling so far.
Whew.
All right, so I'm going to finish this off with something, speaking of polarizing, that'll
Oh boy, I didn't think you were going to get to this one.
Make the fan base happy tonight. So on ESPN's Get Up, and I saw this last week, obviously, since I don't have ESPN on my TV provider right now, former Jets general manager Mike Tannenbaum said he thinks there's a better chance that Shedeur Sanders is the Dallas Cowboys quarterback next year than Dak Prescott. And so Mike Greenberg said, hold my beer. He says he thinks there's a better chance that Deion Sanders is in Dallas next year than either of them. So what do you think about all this hot takery coming out?
I think they all had about 5 or 6 beers before going on this Get Up show because
I think so too.
This is all blasphemy. I mean, it is.
Yellow flag, I'd throw it.
It's horrible. Let me just say it like this. I think Dak's going to have a really good year. Jerry Jones is going to do the old Jerry Jones trick, and he's going to wait till the last second, re-sign, give Dak an extension for more money than he should. If he just did it earlier, probably could have saved himself some money, right? And the long haul. I mean, it's just, if those things actually happen, I think Dallas will melt down. I think like the entire city would melt.
Does Deion Sanders have to go 500 in college before he's going to get an NFL job? I mean, come on. Sloppy Joe, great point. It's incredible people think that Deion's a great coach. What has he shown fundamentally? Just look at how Colorado looked the other night. Undisciplined, like that's going to fly in the NFL, and you can remove whatever team that you think it is. That it's just again, it just an insane hot take that he would even, hint that Deion Sanders has some chance of becoming the head coach. Even the Shedeur Sanders thing, the Cowboys or whatever team ends up drafting Shedeur, I mean, he's going to go at the top of the draft. So is Dallas going to win 4 games this year? I know a lot of people think they're not going back to the playoffs and, whatever, you're entitled to your own opinion, but do you think that they're going to fall off that badly that they're going to have a chance to draft that high in the draft? Because they're not giving up draft capital. That's not what, to trade up. That's not what Jerry Jones does.
Exactly. And they've already put in some assets into Trey Lance as well. They gave up a draft pick for him. They let him basically play the entire preseason. I think they are more invested in developing Trey Lance at this point than they are of drafting a quarterback and developing along that route. I think, Trey Lance, is he still very young and have a lot to go and very moldable still? Sure. But you can't tell me there's that much of a difference between Shedeur and Trey Lance right now, right? And again, Trey Lance has been in the system for a while. They've developed him. They gave up a draft pick for him. Next year, the quarterback depth chart will be as follows. Dak 1, Trey Lance 2, and we won't have to talk about this anymore.
And you will make everybody happy if we don't have to. But there's a reason we saved it for the end of the show tonight. Jess, great whiteboard. Once again, knocked it out of the park.
Woohoo!
Good job. If you didn't see the whiteboard, go back, check it out. A lot of good stuff. We'll have We're going to kind of shift gears. Brian has got a show coming up. My gosh, it's already about 6:45. He's got his show coming up at 7:00. Brian Driscoll. I don't know exactly what it's called. Let me see if I can see what it's called. Does it matter? I mean, you're going to find it. Notre Dame football, still plenty to prove. Northern Illinois preview. So Brian's going to be previewing Northern Illinois coming up here in just a few minutes. Thank you very much, Karen, and everybody else who has been here tonight. So hit the like button before you leave. And, of course, subscribe on our podcast platform if you don't already, and give us a rating. We will see you all later. Have a good one. We will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Peace.